Westbrook Academy, a small town in Maine, USA, October 15th, 1983. A prestigious private school that had been standing for over 150 years, nestled on the outskirts of a small town in Maine, known for its stunning architecture, sprawling grounds, and old ivy-covered brick walls. It was supposed to be just another typical autumn semester at Westbrook Academy, a quiet school where students attended rigorous classes, honed their talents in art and music, and played sports on the weekends. The school was one of the oldest in Maine, with a rich history that many of its students admired, though few really understood. Founded in 1832, Westbrook Academy had seen generations of families pass through its halls. Some alumni came back every year for reunions, but for the most part, the school was steeped in mystery, as all old institutions are. But for Sarah Mackenzie, a sophomore at the academy, her first few weeks at Westbrook had been anything but typical. Sarah, 16 years old, had come to Westbrook from a small town in Vermont. She was an outsider, and in a place like this, it didn't take long to feel the weight of the school's past settling heavily over her. Sarah had always loved history and was fascinated by old places with stories to tell. She'd heard whispers from older students about strange happenings around the campus, lights flickering, cold spots in certain hallways, and the eerie feeling of being watched by invisible eyes. But like most of the newcomers, Sarah dismissed these as mere stories or the overactive imaginations of students looking to spice up their dull lives. That was until she began experiencing things for herself. It all started on the night of October 15th, 1983. Sarah had stayed late in the library, trying to finish an English essay for Mr. Thompson's class. The library was one of the oldest buildings on campus, a large, dark room with high arched windows that let in very little light after the sun had set. The rows of shelves were stacked with books dating back centuries, some so old that their spines cracked at the touch. It was a place that always made Sarah feel like she was walking through time. That evening, she had stayed longer than usual, determined to get her work done. It was after 9 p.m. when she packed up her things, ready to leave. As she stood up from the table, she noticed that the lights in the library flickered, almost as though they were about to go out completely. Sarah thought nothing of it. Old buildings like Westbrook often had electrical issues, but the strange thing was, she had seen the lights flicker before, always at the same time each evening. She had attributed it to the wiring, but the pattern was beginning to feel too deliberate. As Sarah walked toward the door, she felt a sudden, overwhelming chill. It was as if the temperature in the room had dropped drastically. Goosebumps rose on her arms and the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She paused, her hand still on the doorknob, and glanced back into the library. Something caught her eye. A shadow, moving swiftly across the far side of the room just beyond the shelves. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light or perhaps one of the other students playing a prank. But then the shadow moved again, this time much closer to her. Heart racing, Sarah swung open the door and hurried out of the library. As she stepped into the hallway, she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, as if someone was walking behind her. She turned quickly, but the hallway was empty. The only sound now the soft hum of the overhead lights. Shaking her head, she dismissed the incident as her imagination running wild. But as she made her way back to her dorm room, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The campus was quiet, too quiet, and that feeling of being watched, she couldn't ignore it any longer. It lingered in the back of her mind like a weight pressing down on her chest. The next day, Sarah decided to do some research. In the school's archives, she found stacks of old newspapers and journals detailing the history of Westbrook Academy. It wasn't long before she stumbled upon something that sent a chill down her spine. In the early 1900s, Westbrook had been the site of a series of tragic events. The most notable was the death of a young student named Elizabeth Harper, who was found lifeless in the very same library Sarah had been in the night before. Elizabeth had been a popular girl, known for her charm and wit, but one night, she disappeared without a trace. Her body was discovered in the library a week later, hidden behind the bookshelves in the back corner. There was no sign of foul play, but the circumstances surrounding her death were mysterious. Some believed she had fallen from a balcony in a fit of despair, while others suspected foul play. Her death was ruled as an accident, but the school never truly recovered from the scandal. In the years that followed, there were several more reported deaths, most of which occurred under similar mysterious circumstances. Some students claimed to have seen the ghost of Elizabeth Harper, wandering the halls late at night, her eyes wide with fear. Others reported hearing strange noises, like the sound of someone crying or whispering their name. The school had tried to bury these stories, but they were too deeply ingrained in the academy's history to be forgotten. As Sarah delved deeper into the history of the school, the strange occurrences only seemed to increase. She heard the stories from her peers, stories of flickering lights, strange whispers in the hallways, and the unmistakable feeling of being followed. But it wasn't until October 30th, the night before Halloween, that Sarah's experiences became something far more terrifying. She had been walking back to her dorm after a late study session when she passed the library again. The doors were locked, and the building appeared empty. But Sarah could have sworn she saw a figure standing at one of the windows. It wasn't just any figure. It was a young girl, wearing a white dress. Her hair hung loosely around her shoulders, and her eyes, those eyes, were empty, dark woods. The sight was so chilling that Sarah froze in place, unable to look away. Suddenly, the door to the library swung open. Sarah's heart leapt in her chest, but when she looked, no one was there. The figure was gone. That was when Sarah heard it. Soft whispers, barely audible, but unmistakable. "Help me." The voice was faint, almost like a breeze carrying words across the yard. It was a voice that felt impossibly close, as if it were right beside her. But when Sarah turned, no one was there. Terrified, she ran back to her dorm, heart racing, and immediately locked the door behind her. She knew she had to find out the truth. There was no denying it anymore. Westbrook Academy was haunted. The following day, Sarah spoke with her history teacher, Mrs. Simmons, who had been at Westbrook for over 40 years. Mrs. Simmons confirmed the stories Sarah had read in the archives, and then some. "Yes, it's true," Mrs. Simmons said softly, her eyes lowering as though she were afraid to speak. "Westbrook Academy has always been plagued by the spirits of those who have passed. Elizabeth Harper was just the beginning. There's something about this place, something dark and ancient that feeds on the fear of the living." Mrs. Simmons explained that the spirits were not just random hauntings. They were trapped souls, each one tied to the school, to the library in particular, where so many had met their untimely ends. The restless energy of these souls had created a vortex of fear and sadness, and it only grew stronger with time. "Be careful, Sarah," Mrs. Simmons warned. "Some spirits don't want to be freed, they want you to join them." That night, Sarah could hardly sleep. The whispers in her room grew louder, and the figure of the young girl in the white dress appeared again, this time standing at the foot of her bed. Sarah tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. The ghostly figure seemed to reach out toward her, but before it could touch her, she woke up, drenched in sweat. The next morning, Sarah packed her things and left Westbrook Academy. She could no longer ignore the truth. The school was haunted by something that could not be explained, something that would never let go. Sarah transferred to another school soon after, but she would never forget her time at Westbrook Academy. The memories haunted her for years. Even as an adult, Whenever she closed her eyes, she could still see the dark, empty eyes of Elizabeth Harper staring back at her. Some say the hauntings of Westbrook continue to this day, that students still hear the whispers in the halls, that they still see the figure of a young girl wandering the library late at night. And no matter how hard the school tries to bury its past, the spirits of Westbrook Academy are not so easily forgotten.